Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. I was like, am I alone here? What's going on? So good to see
You're
you.
not alone. You're not alone at all. I think that Elizabeth Barnhill, our book buyer, is on her way.
Okay.
And I'm gonna get our little settings all ready so everyone can chat. We had a big group sign up, like 95 people sign up.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. We're gonna have fun talking. My screen is, let me fix this. Hold on one second. Hold on. My screen is doing something crazy. It's sitting on all right, that's better. Hi.
Oh, for some reason, it looks like Elizabeth is saying it thinks I'm a participant.
Oh,
strange. Let me check on something really fast. So
okay,
sorry, Patty. By the way, nice to meet you. I'm Allison.
Hi, Allison. Nice to meet you. I'm
here
whenever you're ready. No rush. We've got 3 minutes anyway.
Oh, that's right. Talk amongst yourself, everyone. Say where you're from. Let me make sure that Elizabeth has
the right link.
Yes, she is a panelist. Okay, she says she's got it.
Okay.
Currently reclaiming. You just come in.
Hi, Elizabeth. Good to see you.
You too. I've got Cape Cod hair. Don't care. Just don't.
Oh, I have been on the road so I have a haircut tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I had an event in Auburn today. And I felt like I need to apologize to everybody because I've been on the road for 3 months. And what are you going to do? By the way, Elizabeth, I love Cape Cod. So when I was growing up, I grew up outside Philadelphia and we spent our summers on Cape Cod.
Yeah. What part?
Orleans.
Okay. My grandfather my uncle had a house in Harwich. So the whole time we were growing up, we always stayed at he had a guest house and a boathouse and just really neat.
We had nothing like that. I'm a preacher. We had like a 1-bedroom cabin.
This was this was not my family. This was my uncle. But he sold the place in 2016. And with our kids every year, we're like, where do you want to go? They're like, we just want to go to Cape Cod. So but this year it's just my husband and me, and we are just having a blast. So
I'm there on tour the first week in August, and it's the first time I've been sent that way. And I guess because the book has a couple scenes in Cape Cod, obviously.
Yes. Yeah. What bookstores are you going to? Do you remember? Am I putting you on the spot? Never mind.
All the good ones.
Yes. I'm only going to one. And I'm going with my friend Adrienne Brudeau. Wassaquit Inn or something.
Wequassett. Can I tell you something about Wequassett?
I'm excited.
I don't know if you like cocktails, but if you do, they have the best coconut. They have the best coconut mojito. My son got engaged at Wequassett last summer.
No way. How cool is that?
Order the coconut mojito.
Okay.
And if you want, I have the recipe for it. They gave it to me, so I'll send it to you.
Oh, that's so special.
I'm going to take that. I'm going to get it and I'm going to take a picture and I'm going to send it to you.
Please do, because we're waiting. Like we're going to go one time on the trip to Wequassett. And awesome. So but heading to Nantucket tomorrow. So we're just having a good time. But
our Christy is on Nantucket right now. You'll get to see her if you go.
Really?
She's has an event tonight, and then she's, how Ellen does that every Wednesday. Ellen Hildebrand does that every Wednesday signing. Christy's joining her tomorrow.
Oh, Elizabeth.
Yay.
I'm so jealous. I'm first jealous of just the weather that you're getting, because
I know we are done. Are you in Texas?
We're in Texas. We're we have been over 100 for so long, and it is
so bad. I'm in Alabama. It is.
Oh, I didn't know you're in Alabama.
I live in Birmingham.
I used to live
my daughter was born in Birmingham, in Homewood, officially.
No way, right across the bridge. I'm in Mountain Brook. So
okay, yes, we lived there for a little bit. And I love Birmingham. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's really hot right now. It's really hot.
Yes, I would, and probably more humid than it is here, I would imagine.
It's kind of crazy right now. And I was in South Carolina for the past few weeks, and it is also burning up. And I mean, it is, you walk outside and you're like, nope, change
Yeah.
my mind,
I know
back in.
that I
Well,
can
always
understand.
say, wherever you live in America, there's 3 months that are just awful. So it doesn't
Exactly,
matter.
because where you are right now, you don't want to be there in January.
Nope,
That's
no.
true.
So I'm just going to hop around.
Yes.
That's
Avoid
what
all
the
of the
smart
bad
people do.
weather.
Yeah.
So
But
Well, I
love-
guess let's officially start. We had I was telling Patty, I don't even know if you know this, Elizabeth, we had like 95 people sign up for this,
Really?
which is, I'm not surprised because I thought the book was so amazing. And many of them already have done book club with us for a long time. So we will record this. So if anyone is on here and has to get off for some reason or the other, just know that tomorrow we will send an email to have this recorded and eventually uploaded to our YouTube channel. So do not fret that you will miss anything from Patty or any of our questions. But yeah, so I introduced myself when we were trying technical things, but I'm Allison Frenzel. I'm one of the co-owners here at Fabled, and I'll let Elizabeth introduce herself and introduce Patty.
all right.
Yes, I'm Elizabeth Barnhill. I am the book buyer at Fabled, and a huge fan of Patty Henry. I have been forever, and I have often told, I think I've told Allison, if there were any author that really just embodies the spirit of Fabled, it's Patti Callahan Henry. And
Thank you.
I was so excited to get to meet you at Winter Institute and kind of talk to you about your book and how much it means to us at Fabled, and just so thrilled to have you tonight with us.
Well, I
So-
hope I can get out to the store one day, maybe
Yes.
as things calm down. Hopefully next year I can get out there. I
Don't
would
come
love-
in the summer because I don't want you to be miserable.
I'm not coming
No.
in the summer.
come
April.
in the fall, late
Our
fall.
April with the blue bonnets.
Yeah, our spring is beautiful. So I would
Yeah.
recommend that.
Let's make it April and I can see the blue bonnets.
Please
Yes.
do. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Well, I'd like to introduce our wonderful guest tonight. Patti Callahan Henry is the New York Times and USA Today's best-selling author of several novels, including Surviving Savannah and Becoming Mrs. Lewis, and one of our personal favorites, The Wardrobe.
Once upon a wardrobe.
That's
Thank
about
you. On Cape Cod time. Thank you. Once Upon a Wardrobe. She is a recipient of the Christie Award, the Harper Lee Award for Alabama's Distinguished Writer of the Year Award, and the Alabama Library Association Book of the Year. She is the co-host and co-creator of the popular weekly online live webcam show and podcast Friends and Fiction. A full-time author and mother of 3, she lives in Alabama and South Carolina with her family. We are so happy to have you with us tonight, Patty.
I'm so excited. So when we ran into each other, I guess that was Seattle, right? It
Was,
Seattle.
Yes.
That was the start of everything because it was Winter Institute. And it was the first time I was talking about Flora Lee. It was the first time I got to really see the advanced copies. And that feels like so long ago, but it was only February.
know.
But we sat there and talked about C.S. Lewis and stories, and we could have had our own private book club in the middle of the quarter.
I know. Well, I saw you in line at Starbucks and I was like, oh, there she is. I want to talk to her so badly. So you were so
There
kind.
she is, needing her caffeine because she's addicted. So
Yes, same girl. I totally. But anyway, we are so happy to have you here tonight. We want to talk about your fantastic book, The Secret Book of Flora Lee. So can you give us sort of an overview of the book in case it's been a while since people have read it?
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Come with me. We're going to go to England. The year is 1939. And we are in Mecklenburg Square in Bloomsbury when we meet the Linden family. The mom, the 15-year-old daughter named Hazel, and the 5-year-old daughter named Flora Lee. An edict has just come down from the government that all children must be sent away from the cities to the countries to be kept safe from the imminent German bombs. This was called Operation Pied Piper. In Operation Pied Piper in the year of 1939, in September of 1939, over 800,000 children were sent away over a 4-day period. 800,000 children in 4 days. And this operation was so immense and so well organized that the children all had the exact same thing, They all had a knapsack with their belongings, a luggage tag hung around their neck with where they were from, who their teacher was, but blank on the back because they didn't know where they were going, a gas mask. And they would board the trains not knowing whether they were going north, south, east, or west. And they would carry a postcard that when they got where they were going, they would send it to their parents and tell them where they ended up. Some children ended up in wonderful places, some children in horrible places, some were lost. There are obviously hundreds of thousands of stories because there were hundreds of thousands of children. Well, our children, Hazel and Flora Lee, got lucky. They were chosen by the Aberdeen family, a mom named Bridie and a son named Harry, who was 15 years old, who lived in the Oxfordshire countryside in a small hamlet called Binsey. And although they ended up in this wonderful and storied hamlet where the River Thames ran right through it, they were still exiled from their family. They were still terrified. So Hazel, being the older sister and being in charge, makes up a fairy tale world for the younger sister. The fairy tale world is called Whisperwood and the River of Stars. In Whisperwood, they can be anything they please: a bird, an owl, a chipmunk, a fish, a lion, a tiger. They can be anything they please, but it has to be a secret. It is a secret between only the two of them. They tell it at night before they go to bed. They tell it in the woodlands when they're playing. Well, a year goes by and Flora Lee disappears. The unthinkable happens. It is assumed that she has drowned in the River Thames. And Hazel carries great guilt because she believes that Flora Lee went to look for Whisperwood and was lost. She's never found, and 20 years goes by. Now Hazel is working in a bookshop, an antiquarian and rare bookshop, when a book comes in the back door. It is wrapped in brown paper. She undoes it. There's a red ribbon. She unties it and she opens it to see original illustrations that give her the chills. They are of a countryside and a woodland and a sparkling river. She pushes them aside to see underneath a first edition rare copy of an American fairy tale book called Whisperwood and the River of Stars.
So good.
You
I
did a
love
great-
it.
So that's what it's about.
Well, everyone on this Zoom, or we do our book clubs where everyone has read the book. So spoilers.
Oh gosh, well then I gave too much. Okay.
No, so
They
don't
didn't
even,
need to hear all that. They already knew.
I wanted to be brought back into it. So I'm glad that you did.
Well, it's,
but
the
the
setup is
good
so relevant to the story. No matter what we talk about, we need to know why they did it,
Yes.
where they came from, all of that.
Yes. I hope it kind of relieves you too, that you can just say spoilers and not have to worry about.
Oh, I'm loving that we can talk about spoilers.
Okay, good.
Let's do it.
Well, I mean, this book was absolutely wonderful and beautifully written. And I had my good friends actually read it even before I got to read it. And we're like, this is the most beautiful book. And it was such a unique perspective of World War II and Operation Pied Piper, which Elizabeth and I were talking about, like, what a crazy name. Like, did the government not do enough research to
Somebody didn't look something up.
No, they did not. They did not. I mean, I guess they're at war, so I will give them that they probably
I
just
guess they were in a panic, but come on.
That's true. But talk about how you got the idea for this story.
Absolutely. So I think the idea of where do stories come from, I find that idea really fascinating. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I did every Friday before the book came out, I did a 12-week, every Friday, where do stories come from? And I mean, I just think it is such I wrote a whole book about it, Once Upon a Wardrobe. Like, where did Narnia come from? Like, what are the seeds in an author's life? Where does imagination come from? How can an idea, something so unseen and amorphous, become a story? So sometimes it's a lightning bolt, but most of the time, just like when I wrote Once Upon a Wardrobe and show all the seeds in Lewis's life that you can find in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that's what happened to me for this one. It wasn't a lightning strike. It was some seeds that grew over time, but I can point to the very first seed, which I can't always do. And for me, what happened is I was doing my research for Once Upon a Wardrobe. And I was doing my research on when they sent children from the cities to live in the country. Because as we know, that is where Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy come from. They come from Operation Pied Piper. Well, I never knew what it was called. I just knew that they were part of the operation that sent children from the cities to the country. And when I saw the word Pied Piper, I had that thing, that kind of goosebump on the back of my neck, down my arms, because I thought I knew the Pied Piper legend. And as we all know, most fairy tales and legends are grim. Not very many of them are, they've been Disney-fied for us, but most of them are very grim. And I was right. I went back and looked up the Pied Piper, and it is a grim legend. It is a German legend about a piper that plays a flute. I thought I had it sitting right here. That plays a flute and leads children away. And when he leads them away, you've seen the picture, children following, gaily dancing behind a piper playing a flute. And he leads them away and they disappear forever and drown in the river Wyvern. Like, what the heck? Why would they name an operation to keep children safe after a legend of lost and drowned children? So that was the very first seed of the story, was when, because I love legends and myths and fairy tales, that kind of hit me that they had used the wrong legend. And what if that legend in many ways was a prophecy for a child? And so I imagined two little sisters, and then other seeds grew in the soil of my imagination. But that was my I can pinpoint this book, where the very first idea for it came from.
I love that. Well, I'm sure Elizabeth has told you how much we love The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe at Fabled, where we have a wardrobe that you can enter in the children's section, and we have a lamppost.
Wait to see it.
I know. See, you're just made to come to the store. We'll believe it. One of the phrases I kept noticing when I was reading and just kind of made me pause is, you mentioned a story is never a story. And
Just
I
a
love
story.
Yes, the story is never just a story. I love that. Can you talk more about what that phrase means to you and why you included it in the book?
Oh, wow. I could talk about this I'll try to shrink it down. So let me figure out where I want to start with this. So years ago, there was this huge psychological study done on happiness. And they discovered that if you ask people what they want, they say they want to be happy. What do you want? I want to be happy. What do you want? I want to be happy. But when they dug down, what they realized over decades of study, that what people really meant was, I want purpose and meaning, right? I want to have purpose. I want to have meaning. And there are myriad ways that we find purpose and meaning in our lives. But one of them, probably the biggest, and probably the one that has lasted through all of humankind, is story. Whether it's myth, fable, Bible story, spiritual stories, story is how we make sense of things. It's how we make meaning of the meaningless. It's how we make sense of the senseless. It's how we come to know each other. It's how we connect. And more importantly, it's how we find purpose in life. So I believe that certain books come to us at the right time in our life. And there's been many books that have shown up for me that have pulled me out of something, or even drawn me into something, that have opened my eyes. So a story is never just a story. It is often, or the best stories are often, something that help us make meaning out of something else, that help us understand ourselves better, help us understand other people better, maybe help us understand our situation better. And we don't even necessarily go into a story with that goal, but for the best ones, that's where we find ourselves.
I love that. I feel like you took us to church. I like it.
Oh, there you go. Amen, sister.
That's right.
That's how Jesus talked to people, was through stories.
Parables.
That's right.
Yeah, because listen, and I talk about this in Once Upon a Wardrobe too. There's logic and there's logos, which is the Greek word for logic and the Greek word for word. And then there's mythos, which is a word for word. And logic and myth are two ways we communicate. And logic got me today from Birmingham to Auburn and back because I knew where to turn. Like logic gets us what we need to do, but it doesn't reach the places that matter. And that's what mythos does, the story and the myths. And so we have to have both, but neither one of those is helpful on its own.
Love it. Well, in the story, there is a very strong sense of place. You talk about how you landed on Binzi as the setting for this wonderful story.
Absolutely. I am enchanted by Binzi. I am a little in love with Binzi. And the next time I go to England, I would like to rent a house there for like a couple days. So I chose Binzi originally because when I first started writing this book, it was still COVID. So I couldn't visit. And I knew I needed to pick someplace in the English countryside because that's where they sent children. So I looked at the coast, I looked at Cornwall, but I knew I couldn't visit until about a year later, which I did. And I have some great research stories if we want to talk about them. But I chose Binzi initially because it was in the Oxfordshire countryside, right outside of Oxford. And I had been there. I had not been to Binzi, but I'd been to the area. So I knew that I could pull back on that feeling and my photos and having been there. And honestly, I picked it because I really thought it was a cool name, Binzi. Just sounded like a made up fairy tale world. Well, it ended up that it was the perfect location for this story. Because the minute I started doing my research on Binzi, I discovered that it is just a story-soaked hamlet. It is right outside of Oxford. It's walking distance. If you leave Oxford University Town Center and walk, it's a mile. And you cross Port Meadow, and there's this tiny little hamlet with one church and one pub, which all good hamlets must have one of each. And it is where Lewis Carroll wrote much of Alice in Wonderland. There is a magic well there. It's the treacle well in Alice in Wonderland where the dormouse are in the bottom. It is the place where the patron saint of Oxford was said, a woman named St. Friedewald was said to have settled and run to and brought forth this healing magical well. It is where Gerard Manley Hopkins wrote some poetry, especially his famous poem, The Poplars of Binzi. It is where C.S. Lewis and some of his pals would sit at the pub when they took their long hikes. So not only was this a beautiful hamlet, and right on the River Thames, because I needed, Flora Lee to disappear into the river, but it was also already completely soaked in story. And that was a nice surprise, but also not surprising because I had felt so drawn to the village. Now, when I finally visited it, it was even more magical than I'd imagined, but that's why I chose it.
Love it.
That's so cool. I can't imagine visiting it and really feeling like the
Oh my
story
gosh.
wrote itself. How perfect it sounds.
Okay, I'm going to tell you one story about visiting, then we'll move on. So I took a tour from this private guide. I hired someone because I was doing research and I didn't want to just walk around the village. Oh, that's a cute church,
Right.
So I hired this. She was amazing. Her name was Tabby. And she showed me all around Binzi. And I was in such awe because I felt like Hazel and Flora Lee were just going to walk out from a hedgerow. It was just exactly as I had hoped I had written it. And we were walking down this long road that had been a dirt path in 1949, but now is of course paved. And I pointed up to the woodlands. We were walking down this long dirt path headed towards the medieval church where a lot of the scenes take place. And I was like thrumming with the anticipation to see this medieval church and this magic well that I'd written about and had seen photos of, but hadn't seen in real life yet. And we were walking down this path and I pointed up to the woodlands and I said, that is where my little girls played up there that pretended to be in Whisperwood. She said, oh, those are called Wickford Woods. And I was like, oh, that's so weird. That's awful close to Whisperwood, but whatever. And she said, yes, the reason they're all still there is because the family put it all in a conservancy and left their daughter, when they died, they left it all to their daughter to manage and keep in a conservancy. Their daughter, Hazel.
Ooh, weird.
What in the world?
Crazy,
That is
right?
crazy.
Wow.
That's crazy.
I almost dropped to the ground. I was like, wow.
That is so
And she-
interesting.
I mean,
Love-
total goosebumps. And I said, no way. I said, that's the name of my character. Like, I'm not naming the character that because you just told me, like, that is the name of my character. And she was so nonplussed. She was so British. She was like, oh, it's just how stories are. And we just kept walking. And I was like, holy moly. I just couldn't believe it. So yeah.
I love her reaction. That's amazing.
That's just how stories are. I think I
Right.
just did an Irish instead of a British
That's
accent.
okay. We wouldn't know better. Okay. I noticed this, and I don't know if it was just me, but we have we're huge fans of owls at Fabled. We have a giant owl that greets you when you walk in.
No
His big top.
way.
Yes. Oh, see, you have to come. He's
This
like
is
7
such a
feet
Patty
tall.
store. Okay.
He is 7 feet tall. And the story, everyone always asks, where'd you find him? And I am like, my business partner literally found him in a field of other animals, and they were giving him away. And so she said one day, like, well, someday I'll own a bookshop, and so I'll take him. And he was in storage for like 3 to 5 years before he came find his perch right when you come in. So I noticed the presence of owls in the story. So I'm not crazy, right? That they're here.
No, I did that on purpose.
Okay, good. Can you talk about the significance that they have on the story?
Well, there's an owl that follows them in Whisperwood. There is, I love the hints of other fables and legends. And so Bridie, the woman they live with, also loves fairy tales and myths. And there's a time where it's the middle of the day and an owl hoots, and she tells them that it means someone's watching them, or there's news coming. And this kind of wise owl coming out of Whisperwood and into the real world was one of my ways of showing that the blending of the seen and the unseen is a lot thinner than we believe. And so Hazel had written this owl into her fairy tale world that she believes took her sister from her. And she had put all that aside. Like, that was nonsense. It caused damage. I will never make up another story. And to have the owl come out of the unseen world into the seen world was one of my ways I was trying to show the connection between the two.
I love it.
I'm glad you noticed it.
Oh, yes.
Not very many people notice things like that. Like I had a woman today, I was in Auburn doing a luncheon, and she said she read it fast, trying to figure out what happened to Flora Lee, and then reread it to look for the hints. And that's when she noticed things like the owl or the hints about what happened, or, and I do the same thing. If there's a mystery at its core, sometimes I don't slow down enough because my mind wants to know the answer. But I'm glad you noticed that, because that was important to me.
I love it. That's awesome.
So in the book, I want to talk about what Bridie feels. Bridie was referring to Harry, who I guess everyone kind of assumes that he is the guilty party. And she says, there's always a scapegoat, my love, always. Yeah. It is a part of every story if you look closely enough. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? Are there always scapegoats in stories and fairy tales? And why was that important to bring to Flora Lee?
Oh my gosh, you guys noticed such good stuff. I snuck it. You are such good questions. I snuck in a lot of things like that. Like, a story isn't just a story, or a princess can also save herself. And there's always a scapegoat. And I don't know if y'all read a lot.
We do.
I'm trying to figure out where to take this. I don't know if y'all read a lot of, do you ever read Richard Rohr?
We have Richard Ward I have not.
Yeah,
but
I love
are-
Richard Rohr.
We know him and he's in
Yeah.
the shop. For sure.
Enneagram, our Enneagram, Richard Rohr. Is that a
Yes.
different- Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, same guy. And he wrote a book called Falling Upward. And I think he's written like 80 books.
Yeah.
But he often writes about that too. But this idea that we have to make sense of things sometimes by placing the blame on someone, on making someone the cause. And it goes back to trying to make meaning of things. Like this happened because of this person, and they are other and different. And Bridie is other and different also. And so some people blame her. I bet she had something to do with it. She doesn't go to the same church we do. She's other and different, right? And that when we choose how to define other and different, then we can blame them. And it's in fairy tales, it's in real life, it's in stories of good and evil. And often the scapegoat isn't the right person, but people need someone to blame. And they usually choose someone who is other and different.
That's true. I often don't highlight quotes in books that are fiction. I mean, I do it, but I was highlighting so many things like that quote. I was like, I'm going to have to think about that for a while. And like you're saying, like that is such a life truth. So yeah, I'm glad
And when
that
you
you
read
like
more
that.
about it, you can see how, probably not you're the sweetest thing in the world, but how I can see how I do it. Right.
Oh,
And so
yes.
it's
No, I
sometimes
guarantee
when I'm
I
writing
have.
something like that, it's a reminder to me, right, to kind of look at the archetypes or the ways that I'm viewing the world through archetypes or through other people's eyes, instead of and easily casting things upon people and taking a step back. So
That's true. I was really interested. Okay, so as we all know, we're spoiling things. It really felt right that Peggy was going to be Flora Lee, and and almost too right, which made sense. But when we found out who Flora Lee really was, I kept thinking about Peggy and her mom, and it felt more than a red herring in the, a distraction in the story. Their presence feels there's like a deeper meaning. Can you talk about that? I'm assuming, but that their presence is a deeper meaning, but I just thought that was a very interesting addition to the story.
So, a couple different things. So first, let me say that Peggy originally was Flora Lee.
Interesting.
So in the original version, she was. A lot of things happened that made me step back from that ending. But the bottom line was Dot already existed in the book. And I realized that she was there all along and that she was looking for herself. So there's this poet I love named Padraig Ó Tuama. Do y'all know Padraig Ó Tuama? Oh my gosh, he's amazing. So he's Irish, and he obviously Padraig Ó Tuama, and he wrote this essay for On Being. Do y'all know that there's a podcast called On Being with Krista?
Yes, I've heard
one of my favorite podcasts of all time. And he was writing some articles and blogs for them, and I read this article he wrote, and he said that some people say, experts say, many experts have said that there's only 7 plots in the world and that we just write them over and over. Mm-hmm. Some experts say there's only 3 plots in the world and we write them over and over. But he says there's only 1 plot in the world and it's told over and over in stories and songs and poetry. And that plot is a question. And that plot is, who am I? And I read that and I was like, that's what the book is about. Like, I think that's what every book is about, but it's why we read. But who am I? And I realized that Dot, in her obsession with the lost children of Pied Piper, was looking for herself. Who am I? Who am I? Why am I obsessed with these lost children? Because she was one. So back to your original question of the deeper meaning of Peggy and her mother, it was also the vehicle for getting Whisperwood back into the world. That the story could live on, that the story could travel from Flora Lee to her caretakers, to this nurse, to the nurse's sister. And somebody grabbed onto that story and said, let's do something with it. Like, we can do something with it. And this is important. And then a story can live on in that way, while at the same time hoarding it for yourself, and not being honest of its origins. And I also wanted to explore this idea of, who does a story belong to, right? Who gets to claim it's mine? And I mean, as booksellers, and I know as an author, that they will announce a new season's book, and like 4 of the books will be about a subject, and none of the authors even know each other, right? Like, there is this phenomenon where stories and subjects rise up. So I think 4 books came out about Operation Pied Piper last season. Hazel Gaynor's The Last Lifeboat, Julia Kelly's The Lost English Girl, another book called Beyond the Sea, I think. And when I saw that, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, all these books about. So I wanted to explore that with Peggy and her mother, that who gets to claim it, right? So they did have a deeper meaning, but originally she was also Flora Lee.
Interesting.
Till I realized she wasn't.
Oh, I love hearing the backstory about that. Okay, so you talk so much about the importance of fairy tales, especially to children. And we were wondering, what are some of your favorite fairy tales, or even maybe some fairy tale retellings that have meant a lot to you?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, of course, Narnia. And I don't know if we count that as a fairy tale, but if I'm going to dive into like some of my favorites, they were usually myths. When I was in high school, I took Latin instead of a language I could speak on another country.
I did the same thing. I'm president of Latin Club right here. And I was just president to put it on my college application. I did not serve a very.
You did not serve well?
No, I
Oh
didn't.
my gosh, I was in the Latin Club too. So the Latin Club is very cool, by the way. You would think it would be, but it actually. We had more fun than you think we did. So for me, a lot of it was about the original stories and in the original language and what they mean. And so I love the resurgence of retellings. I think it started with Madeline Miller, but her retellings, but there are now so many. Jennifer Saint is doing it. I just saw a new one about Clytemnestra. I know Madeline is writing a new one about Persephone. But for me, my favorite so far has been Circe. I just think she did an absolutely astounding job with that. And what's fascinating is sometimes you'll read a book and the author will say, this is a retelling of Snow White. This is a retelling of Rapunzel. And you won't even see it until they say it. And then you're like, oh, yeah, I can see that, because those stories are so ingrained in us. As a kid, my favorite was Rapunzel, because I wanted long flowing locks. And the most terrifying one to me when I was a kid, and I actually had bad dreams about it, was Hansel and Gretel.
Oh, understandably.
Hansel and Gretel freaking terrified me when I was a kid.
Yes.
Yeah.
I honestly, in my mind, I thought of Bridie as like a good witch. She kind of was like that to me.
I think of her as, yes, a good witch, and also kind of a fairy, like a magical little fairy.
She was otherworldly for sure.
Yeah. So I want to hear, even though I'm not doing the interviewing, I'm accustomed to doing the interviewing. I want to hear y'all's real quick favorite fairy tales when you were a kid, or myths, or whatever.
I used to have a 1970s picture book of Snow White and Rose Red. and loved that story. I loved that there were two of them. And I think my mom like found like later as an adult it on eBay and bought it for me. So I have it
Oh,
for my kids,
sweet.
and it's totally 70s. I mean, the colors are that way, but that's when I love Snow White. I love retellings. I'm very picky, as Elizabeth knows, when we go through our catalogs about, not sure, but one that I would recommend that I loved
Okay.
was called The Sea Witch. It is a young adult book, but is the backstory of Ursula.
You are like the third person to tell me that. So I
No
need to read
way.
it. Yeah.
It
I need
is
to read it.
interesting. I do love a good villain backstory, like Maleficent, the movie was great. So this is very in that same realm, like why she is the way she is.
Okay.
She's definitely an angry woman. So that was one of my favorites too.
How about you, Elizabeth?
Well, my dad always read us fairy tales, and we had and I'm blanking on the name. I think it's just a children's. I think my mother may be on here. She can say what it is. It's a name of this children's fairy tales, and they looked like Grimm's fairy tales. They were very scary looking.
Yeah.
But my favorite one that he always read to us was Rapunzel, of course.
Yep.
Same thing. I wanted the hair. I was like, that would be, I had like Crystal Gale hair when I was younger. It was really long hair. And it's like, oh, it'd be great if I could,
You're almost there.
Rated. Yeah.
so close. Yeah. And then there was one called Tom Tit Tot
Oh,
in
I
there.
don't know that one.
It was Tom, nobody knew his name. And so Tom Tit Tot would say, I would grant you these things if you could tell me what my name is. Nobody knew his name, and somebody finally did. And then the one with the spinning of the gold.
Oh yeah, where she pricked her finger.
Yes.
That's
Well, that's Sleeping
or
Beauty.
Rumpelstiltskin.
I'm thinking of Rumpelstiltskin. That was another one in the
Rumpelstiltskin. There's so many, and now that we're talking about, I'm like, oh yeah, and Peter Pan. I was obsessed with Peter Pan.
I love Peter Pan.
Yeah,
So
I was
I do
obsessed.
love a good dark fairy tale too. I think
Yeah.
that.
Oh, I
as
like a
well.
dark fairy tale. And in the end, actually, Peter Pan is a dark fairy tale.
Yes. Okay.
It's
So
been Disneyfied, but it's dark.
yes, the new book, Darling Girl. If you haven't read that one,
Oh, I blurbed that book. I
oh,
love
well,
that
that's
book.
probably why I read it.
I love that book. And I
Oh
love
my
Liz.
God.
She's amazing. I got to finally meet her in Chicago, in Boston. Yeah, she's cool.
That was I'm not going to spoil anything, but the twist that she did on
Woof.
that story.
Talk
were
about dark.
So good.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. The note from the author at the very end was so lovely. It was just such a great way to really tie up the story, which not every fiction writer does that. Talk about why you chose to include that.
The author's note or the
Yes.
epilogue?
The author's note. Well, I guess I read it as the author's note, but I guess
Okay.
it's an epilogue.
I was just wondering if you meant that I wrapped up the story in the epilogue.
Oh no, no, your voice,
My voice. I chose to do that, and I've done it with all my historical fiction because I want people to know, if they care. I mean, you can read the story without reading the author note, but I want people to know where it came from and why I think it matters. So for Becoming Mrs. Lewis, of course, it's about C.S. Lewis's wife. For Surviving Savannah, I wanted to honor the people who were on that shipwreck. And for this book, I really wanted to talk about, I got to interview a real life evacuee. And I wanted to talk about not only how these people haven't told their stories are just coming to light, but what exile means to children and taking them away from their parents, and also how story sustains them. So I wanted to talk about why the book was important for me to write. Listen, I spent 2.5 years of my life writing this novel and doing the research and stitching it together and trying to find the answer to the mystery. And I felt like there were a lot of themes in there that I don't want to teach when I write. I want you to just dive into a story. But the author's note is my way of saying, come with me. This is why it mattered to me.
I'm always disappointed when a book doesn't have an author's note. I usually read the author's note before I read the book. It's my very favorite part.
Really?
Well, do you remember in the old days, and I don't know when it started changing, but in the old days, they used to put author notes and acknowledgements in the front. And then maybe 15 years ago, they started putting it in the back.
Interesting.
So, so sometimes people skip them. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's where I skip to first. It's like a cookbook that has, I like when it tells a story before you read the
Before I
recipe.
make the recipe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I have read every one of your historical fiction books.
Oh, thank you.
Just love them. But I was looking back and it really looks like you started off maybe with Southern contemporary, which is also something I dearly love as a fellow Alabamian. But then you gravitated more toward the historical fiction. Is that really how that worked? And do you feel more comfortable in the historical fiction realm, or do you think you'll ever go back to Southern fiction?
That's a great question, because it wasn't on purpose. So what happened was I was writing Southern contemporary fiction. When I first started writing, those were the stories that came to me. They were, modern day. They were set in the places where I live and the places I love. They were family stories. And then a story idea came to me like a freaking bolt of lightning that set me back on my heels. And so I'll tell the story. So I was at a Christmas party with a bunch of author pals in Nashville, Tennessee, where a bunch of my author pals live. And I was talking to Ariel Lawhon. You guys probably know her. I love her historical fiction. And I had kind of hit a wall, a dry spell. I was frustrated. And I told her, I'm just in a drought. I don't know if I even want to do this anymore. I've written 10 books. I think I've said what I want to say. I think I'm done. And she asked me a question that nobody had ever asked me. And I was in the just right, relaxed state of mind. She said, "What would you write if you could write anything you wanted?" And I said, "Oh, wow, I would write a story about C.S. Lewis's wife. Like, she is fascinating. And that is the most improbable love story." And she said, "Well, then why don't you?" And I said, "Because I don't write historical fiction." And she said, "Good, because that's such a great idea. I'm going to do it." And I said, "I already started. I'm doing it. Don't stop." Like, it was just like this flash moment for me. Like, I don't write historical fiction. That's the stupidest thing in the world. I can write whatever I want to write. Like, there's no law that says I can't write historical fiction. But I had gotten into such a rhythm that I thought, I can't, the thought of changing seemed, and it ended up, yes, kind of being a problem. My publishing house didn't want it. I had to switch because they don't like you doing that, right? When you're successful, or at least a little successful in one genre, they don't always want you like flipping it over. So when I wrote that book, let me go backwards to when I was a nurse. So my first career was as a nurse. I was a pediatric nurse. My master's degree is in pediatrics, and to put myself to graduate school, I worked as a research nurse. So I love research. I love finding the one fact, the one thing, the Pied Piper that takes the story you think you know and flips it on its head. And so when I wrote Becoming Mrs. Lewis, and I brought out things about that marriage and that relationship that most people didn't know about, and that changed their view of who she was, especially, I just knew that that's where I wanted to head with my work, that I wanted to do research and pull things out of history and change the story you think you know and flip it on its head. So I never say never, but for now and for any foreseeable future, historical fiction is my jam.
Well, and we still sell Becoming Mrs. Lewis like crazy.
I mean,
Love it.
Almost everybody at a book signing, I'll have at least a fourth of the people, if not more, come up and say, "I found you because of Mrs. Lewis." And I'm like,
I love that book.
She changed my life, and I love her. I feel like I know her. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm looking across my office, I'm looking at a picture of her. So, I mean, she's, she has changed me. Her bravery and her chutzpah has definitely influenced me.
And didn't her son write something, a note in the book as well? Yeah, I just
Yeah, and he also wrote the foreword or a note for Once Upon a Wardrobe. So, yeah.
Oh, great. Well, we have a few questions from the chat. There's two people that would like to know what is on your TBR, your to be read list. And they are also looking at behind you in your bookshelf and was wondering what kind of books, if you have any favorites.
Oh, wow. So right now you're looking at all my books, but if we go that way, there's a lot more books. And if you go that way, there's a whole bunch more. On my to be read pile. So right now, a lot of them have to do, I'm one of the co-hosts of Friends in Fiction. So a lot of the books I'm reading are for the people we're interviewing. So let me start here. One of my favorite books of last year that I tell everyone to read if they haven't read is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. Top of the list for me. So a lot of the books I read early copies for because of the show. So the book I just finished just found out yesterday, is the number one Indie Next pick for August. And that is the book Shark Heart. I love it. Don't you love it?
So
it's so weird. I love it so much.
I couldn't believe that Elizabeth liked it. Is not her usual.
Well, and what's really fun is that she's from this teeny tiny little town in Oklahoma, and the same little town that Laura Tremaine is from, who's also a big podcaster. And so I gave the book to Laura, and she's saying it's her number one book of the summer. It's our subscription box pick for Pioneers. And I actually messaged with the author today. I loved that book.
So I met her at Winter Institute, and we are published by the same publishing house. So we were together in Seattle and in Boston. And when I heard what it was about, I was like, maybe. And then I started reading it. And I can see in the chat, it is called Shark Heart, and it is by the author Emily Haybeck, I don't know. It's her debut novel. She is absolutely genius. I mean, she is going to be a huge rising star. When you hear the plot, you think, I don't know. And you start reading, and I mean, I dreamt about it. I just thought it was absolutely, oh, there you are.
It's so dark. I'm so sorry. But I have my phone like shining a light on me.
You look illuminated. I loved it.
But I love Shark Heart. I loved it. So I'm so glad you did too. I think it's going to be a huge, huge, huge hit.
I was telling my husband about it today. I was like, it's about this guy and a woman and man who get married, and then he turns into a great white shark. And he was like, what?
I know.
But it's so beautiful.
So good. She's such a beautiful writer. I'm so happy for her. She's so modest and so astounded by all the success that's coming. I just finished today on audio, Hello Beautiful. And it was gorgeous. I also finished this week, Alice Hoffman's new one, The Invisible Hour. And it is a magical realism book about a woman who goes back in time and meets Nathaniel Hawthorne. And it's beautiful and magical. I loved Kate Morton's book this year, Homecoming. I loved it. So yeah, it's probably enough out of me.
Oh, I feel like we share very similar tastes.
Oh, there's a new retelling coming up that I read and blurbed that we're interviewing on Friends of Fiction called Horses of Fire by A.D. Rhine, which is two authors, Ashley and Danielle. And it is a retelling of the women of Troy. Instead of the Trojan War being told from the men's point of view, it is including Helen. So Helen has a voice. Helen, the woman who was blamed for starting the war, has a voice. So I liked that a lot. And they have a sequel coming. So Horses of Fire.
That's so cool. I love when we get book recommendations.
Yeah.
Too.
I'm looking around because I really want to read The Postcard because I keep hearing so much about it.
Oh, it's so good.
I know. I've got to read the books for the show right now, but we have a 2-week hiatus coming up, and I think my read is going to be The Postcard. So
it's a really great molding of like true and and fiction. It's just really,
really
well done. It's like the fudge. I call it fudge of books where you just want to eat it slowly, take it in,
savor it.
Yes.
So, okay, both of you give me a book rec that you've loved. coming up.
Well,
Or
Sea
even
Witch.
Sea Witch. Okay.
Yes. Right now I'm reading Sunshine Nails and it's adorable. It's
Is it good? Okay.
yes, it's like I almost said it's like a combo of Crazy Rich Asians and You've Got Mail
I
together.
keep hearing about it. So, okay.
It's a very enjoyable read for sure.
How
Well,
about you?
I'll tell you, 3 of my favorite books from this year, other than Flora Lee, of course, Hello Beautiful.
Yeah.
And then Go as a River by Shelley Reed, which is a
I've not read that yet.
You will love it. I really, really think you'd love it.
Okay.
And All of That Is Mine I Carry With Me by William Landay, which is sort of
I don't know that one either. Okay.
he wrote Defending Jacob, sort of
Yes.
it's a good mystery, but those are probably the ones I would recommend.
Okay. I'm on it. All right.
Right. If I think of any more, I'll email you that with
You
with
have my, yeah, you know how to find me.
coconut mojito recipe.
Exactly.
Elizabeth can't help but to sell books. She's always a good recommender for
That's
sure.
awesome.
I love it. Well, what are you working on now? Can you tell us what your next project is?
Do you have any other questions?
I know. Does anyone else have any?
What I'm working on now, I'm working on I'm working on a book that I can't even begin to articulate in any, but I promise I'm working on one. So
We trust you.
We'll wait patiently.
The story will come.
yes. Oh, it's coming. It's at that phase where like, if I try to start explaining it, then I'm going to hate it. I'm going to be like, that didn't sound right. That doesn't sound interesting. Like I'll ruin it for myself and for you.
We trust you. We will, anywhere you take us, we'll go, Patty.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll remember that.
Well, we do really, really hope someday you'll come to Fabled and we'll be able
I'm
to
going to come
take you
to-
through the wardrobe and give you one of our Turkish Delight coffee drink. So you can celebrate.
I
all
actually
the
like
that we
Turkish
love.
Delight candy.
Yeah,
Most
we
people
thought about
don't.
making it.
I actually like
Most
it.
people don't. That's true.
I like it. It's like it's almost like a gummy bear. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like them. I like Turkish Delight.
I've always been like, Edmund really gave up his siblings for that candy. Like
I know. I'm always like, his Turkish Delight must be a tad bit different than
Yes.
his Turkish Delight.
I mean, again, it was in wartime, probably didn't have a lot of candy just lying around. So
or maybe it was like extra special magical Turkish Delight.
yes.
But it is funny when kids read that and then have some, they're like,
Why?
Yeah, we should do that with question. What candy would you give up your siblings?
Yes, that's a very
there
good
you go. What candy would you give up
Maybe
your
Reese's
siblings?
peanut butter cups. I would do that.
Oh gosh, now I have to answer that. A cupcake, man. Just
Yeah.
good cupcake.
Yes, I'll go for brownies. Brownies are really good. I mean, I wouldn't give up my siblings too,
I wouldn't give up my
But-
siblings, but if we're picking favorites, like
but it would be the favorite. Yes.
hypothetical. Yeah.
Patty, thank you so much. This has
Oh,
been
you guys are awesome.
seriously, and Brenda, one of our customers in the chat, said this has been my favorite author interview, and I have to agree. This has been so
Oh,
great.
Thank
And
you,
just
Brenda. That means a lot to me.
you feel
I've been
like a
excited
kindred-
about this. I kept posting. I'm coming. I'm coming.
Oh, good.
But we will arrange a trip sooner rather
Yes.
than later. And I love what your store is doing. I love the community you've built. I watch on Instagram, I see, and I'm seeing in the chat, you guys have an amazing community, and I'm honored that you included me. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And tell your friends to look out for me tomorrow in Nantucket because
I will. I'll tell Christy to look for you.
Yes.
She's there. She had a big thing tonight, and then she does that thing with Ellen tomorrow. So,
Oh, can't wait.
Aw.
Perfect timing.
all right.
Well-
Tell Cape Cod I said hello and I love it.
Yes. Well, you can tell the humidity is alive and well. You know, I don't even know
I
what
mean,
to-
come on. I'm in Alabama. I don't even want to
That's
hear about
true.
humidity.
That's true. I guess that's the one thing I can not be jealous of.
Yes, you can't say a word to me about him. I keep,
Yeah.
Anyway. All right, you guys, you're amazing. Thank you so
Thank
much for having
you.
me.
Well, we are
All right.
going to introduce very fast our next book club, and I'm going to
Ooh.
post it in the chat, the link. So please sign up, and as well as the book that you can purchase from us. And I'll have Elizabeth just give us a little synopsis of our next pick for next month.
Yes, our pick for next month is The Trap by Catherine Ryan Howard. She is the queen of Irish crime fiction. We adore her. And
Ooh.
we sell all of her books at Fabled. And the last 2 books, the night before her American debut, she has wanted to talk to Fabled. So we're so excited. So it's a little different this time. Normally we do spoilers, but we're going to talk about the book the night before it releases in America. And then we'll probably do some fun little online chats with our book club after everyone reads it. But that's what August is. That's August the 1st. And we're so excited about that. It's a really, really fun mystery. Lots of twists, everything we expect from Catherine Ryan Howard.
And
I've
she
never
is
read her books. Now I have to go find her.
Go
she
read The
is
Nothing Man.
so fun. Oh,
The
yeah.
What? The Nothing Man?
Nothing Man. If you liked The Golden State Killer, but I'll Be Gone in the Dark, that story. I don't know if
Okay.
it's sort of like that, but she's
Okay.
fantastic. Or Distress Signals. That's another
Yeah.
really good.
She's so fun too. I mean, I feel like she's an extrovert, and she stays up till 1:30 her time in Ireland to
To
Zoom
talk
with
to you
us,
guys.
which is
That's awesome.
honor. I'm honored that she would do that.
All right.
So
All
thanks.
right, guys.
Well, great. Thank you again, Patty. Thanks for everyone that joined us, and we will see you next month.
All right,
Thank
bye,
you.
guys.
See ya.
Bye.